Hello, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to talk at the forum. My name is Gabo Bartha, and I'm sitting at the guest table of Terrapolis permaculture garden. And I'm going to put on some gear to help me talk better. This is a chain of various seeds, and I got it from a friend, and I'm amazed how beautiful they are. And another one made of seeds, tiny seeds, incredible work. And it's like a good preparation. I also prepared a drink to say cheers to everybody, a tea. And this is a tea made of this beautiful flower. Smells fantastic. Too bad you can't smell it. It's, can anybody guess what this is? Probably it's very difficult to tell. We are in a wine region, in a World Heritage Wine region in Tokaj, in Hungary. And this is a monoculture of vineyards. But some vineyards have been cut out, and the old plants return as wild grapes. And I like to pick the flowers of these wild grapes. They are more fragrant than the cultivated ones, and they are for sure not sprayed. So they are organic. And for me, preparing this drink has also a symbolic meaning. It has a long taste. The symbolic meaning is that I'm trying to look for elements that counteract this monoculture here. And Terrapolis is such a place, a very diverse garden. I have to say a few things about the name of Terrapolis. It comes from Donna Haraway, an American historian of science. She's very popular with artists nowadays. And a good friend of mine, Eniku Bolo, suggested that my garden gets the name from Donna Haraway's writing. I will just read a few sentences from Donna Haraway's SF, Speculative Fabulation and String Figures piece of writing, where actually she defines Terrapolis as fictional multiple integral equation. Terrapolis is a niche space for multi-species becoming with. Terrapolis is multi-species storytelling, multi-species worlding in SF modes. And SF for her can mean speculative fabulation, speculative feminism, science fiction, science fact, science fantasy. And she also suggests string figures. I also
San Francisco.
Yes. San Francisco dough, sourdough. Yeah. And I also suggest slow food, which resonates very well for me. Terrapolis is open, not poor in world, full of connections and networked reenactments. Terrapolis is full of companion species, not post-human, but home post. Terrapolis is of and for humus. Terrapolis is abstract and concrete. Terrapolis is SF. So welcome to Terrapolis. A te testem, az én tested. I just said something in Hungarian and in a very twisted grammar, untranslatable into English. In the end, you will find out what I'm talking about. Ginat would have liked this presentation to be more live in the garden, but unfortunately we are witnessing a heat wave and a terrible drought. So these are two reasons for which I will not walk you into the garden right now. But I prepared two things, a vase, and I will present the members from here to you instead of going to the garden. I also have a tray of leaves that I picked not long ago. I mean, in the morning, actually. And then I will plan to show you a couple of pictures from the garden. And I would like to ask you, Ginat, that in case, to remind me 5 minutes before I run out of time, so that I'm done with the pictures, or I stop showing pictures and I get to my conclusion. All right? Okay. So happy birthday, Ginat.
Oh, thank you.
I sent you a picture of a similar vase the other day, but today it changed because I put fresh flowers in it, and the garden changes also all the time. I'm always very curious to see what pops up new, to see what opens, what disappears, whether newcomers show up, unexpected appearances. So apologies to these plants now that I take them out from the water, but I will walk you through this vase one by one. These come all from my garden. This is clary sage. Familiar to anybody? It has such a strong smell. As soon as I touch it, it gives off quite a strong smell. They used to use it for flavoring wine. I can't imagine a wine flavored with this. It's such a strong smell. Fennels are flowering, are actually over their blooming period, and they are already forming their seeds. And they give an incredibly sweet fragrance in the whole garden. So you step into our garden, it's a pretty closed area, and there's this Mediterranean smell all over in the garden due to the fennel. In Hungarian, édes kömény, sweet cumin. Here's another plant, a medicinal plant. Can anybody recognize what this is? Tiny white flowers, and the leaves are like eyebrows. So the French call it Venus's eyebrows. It is the yarrow, a medicinal plant also. I like to put tiny bits of it into the salad. It has this pharmacy taste, but in a small quantity, it's very interesting. This is a very nicely blooming mint. Very beautiful. And we get to something that is quite unusual in a vase, but very beautiful. And one of the totem plants of Terrapolis, a plant that is blooming right now. This is Swiss chard. And it does so many things in the garden. It's a very versatile plant. It's basically totally effortless to grow it, and it perpetuates itself. It brings many seeds, and if you let the plant live its full life, bolt, ripen the seeds and drop the seeds, you'll always have Swiss chard. It can be used like spinach or in many ways for many things. It's a fantastic leafy plant. Birds love it. Bugs love it. Everybody loves it in the garden. Only people around us don't know what it is and whether you can cook with it. Clara is showing something. Can't hear her.
We don't eat Swiss chard, and it grows all over the place, so I don't like to plant it.
Why don't you?
Cannot answer. I don't know how to answer.
Clara, I would never make that statement. So
okay, not recommended.
You
Doesn't
mean,
it have oxalic acid? Doesn't it have oxalic
that.
acid? Yes.
As far as I know, it helps to put boiling water on it and throw away the first water and then cook it like that. And also to cook it with vinegar. Or in other traditions, they say to cook it with milk, but that's obviously not an option here. I think in moderate quantities, it's perfectly fine to eat some of this. But is it frequent in your region? Yeah. This plant is hyssop. This ends in Latin also as officinalis. So actually we have several plants here with officinalis ending, which means that they are medicinal plants. This is also blooming right now, has these beautiful little tasty flowers, but I'm not going to taste it now. I have a whole plate to taste soon. The smell is very good. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Look around and see if you can find the hyssop around you. It's worth making friends with it. And here we have this white flower with these big seeds forming right now. And I was surprised to find out that in English it's called marshmallow. So actually marshmallow is also the name of a plant. They should be going back to the vase, by the way. Honeysuckle. Next to the steps, the stairs to the house, in the evenings, the biggest fragrance around the honeysuckle, and the bugs are coming. Bugs and there's this hummingbird moss, hawk moss, which is almost like a colibri bird. A huge moss comes and visits this flower. It's quite spectacular. even now. I will handle a nettle for the sake of this talk, for the sake of this composition, and because it doesn't really hurt. It's not so bad. I encourage nettle in certain corners of the garden, and I discovered what a fantastic soup it makes, not only as a spring vegetable, as a spring soup, but just for tea, the dried leaves for tea. A cup of a thick nettle tea is like having a soup. It's very nurturing. And I have this tendency to allow plants to live their full cycle in the garden, to bring seeds, and to be part of the whole texture of the living community in the garden. And I just recently started to harvest the seeds of the nettle, and I came up with the recipe for kind of salad with nettle seeds that resembles a kind of fish roe salad that we would eat back in Romania. You cook some kind of maybe millet or grease or yeah, and then you mix it with the seeds and chopped onions and a little bit of lemon juice and maybe some olive oil. And it's a little bit like tara masalata, but not with fish roe. Romanians came up with this invention of how to make a salad with very little fish roe, but still make it a big salad. Well, by adding some cooked grains. Today I noticed this new one that bloomed, and this is soapwort. I remember it smells very nice. And I remember how when I was a child, my father showed me that you can actually wash your hand with this. So there was a little river. We were walking and we found this plant, and you just take the flower and it foams up and you can wash your hands with it. This is a totally spontaneous arrival to the garden. Not so spontaneous arrival. I brought this plant into the garden like I do with many other plants in order to increase the biodiversity and in order to practice some kind of rewilding in a situation when actually the civilizatory tendencies are going very opposite to having the biodiversity. This is yellow sweet clover, if I'm not wrong in English. Yes, Melilotus officinalis. It contains coumarin, so when it dries, it has a very, very good smell. So this is my universal home fragrance. I keep bunches of this plant dried in every room, and people come in and they can't figure out what is this good smell in the house. And this is this yellow sweet clover. So of course I brought in seeds and I scattered it in the garden and it came out. lavender, easy peasy. The second totem plant of Terrapolis is called orach. It can be used in a similar way to spinach. It's a leafy green. People around here remember it as their grandmother's spinach, so some kind of forgotten spinach. It comes in purple, dark green, and this bright green color. And it's hanging above our table also in the dried form. It's as long as our 12-person table. When I grew it for the first time, that's when I realized that it's very much like a person. It has it grows even bigger than us, but it's not a tree. It's actually a soft stem plant. Nevertheless, it has such personality. I know it from my childhood, and I was very happy to discover it in Hungary and to be able to have it and grow it in my garden. And when it brings its seeds, again, birds are very interested in it, and bugs too, various insects. It is also a very good trap for sting bugs. I'm trying to be friendly with all the inhabitants of the garden. I don't ever use any chemicals against anybody, but sting bugs are causing real damage. So I have to collect them. And it's very easy to collect them when they come to the seeds of the bolted orach plant. Orach also later on makes very good fire starter. The thin, dry branches are very good for starting the fire in the stove. So it has multiple uses and a very long life in here.
What was that plant again?
Orach. I will write it in the chat to Ginat, or where should I write it? So
To everybody, you can write it to everybody.
to everybody, hold on. Oh yeah, everyone. So the Latin name is Atriplex hortensis. Atriplex hortensis. Orach in English. Mountain spinach. The French call it mountain spinach. What happened? What seed?
You did a screen share.
I didn't want to.
Oh no, Claire Coretti's screen share. Hold on, Claire, you need to close that. Let's see if I could do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I sent it.
Okay,
French
go
call
ahead.
it mountain spinach. Yeah. Here we have, yes. Here we have tarragon that starts to bolt. It's also a very much favored ingredient in the Transylvanian cuisine. Most of the plants are blooming right now, so even my parsley is blooming, so no problem. I pick it all and I use the flowers instead of leaves. Right now I don't have too many parsley leaves, so I use these very fine, lacy little flowers in the kitchen. What I enjoy very much is to have ingredients at hand that normally one couldn't buy in the shops because simply they are not commercialized. You can have these plants in the kitchen at any stage of their life, basically. This is the flower of the wild carrots. And the good news is botanists would be very happy to see that there is this purple dot in the middle, because they say that this is a variety that is disappearing in comparison to earlier years when almost all wild carrots used to have this dark center, and now this is disappearing. And I remember reading a piece of writing from a botanist who is familiar with stories from ethnobotanists too. There are stories, folk stories, or people talking about the fact that if this change occurs, that this disappears, then there's something seriously wrong with the world. So it looks like we are getting to that point. This is oregano blooming, not a very strong smelling one like the Mediterranean one. It smells very good nevertheless. And last plant almost is here and not here. The thing is that this is the chicory, which had beautiful blue flowers early in the morning, but it closes in the morning. So it's here with us. It's in many places in the garden. I bought some seeds of various chicories, and I didn't keep track of who's who. And they inhabited the garden. And it's quite fantastic to be able to pick it very, very early in the spring. They overwinter. I never force them. Again, when they bring seeds, the birds love it. So the most incredible birds come to their specific kind of seeds that they like. It's such a magnet. So this was your vase, Ginat.
Bravo.
And let's see what's on the plate. I think I'm going a little bit too slowly. So I think the plants that we've seen already, they are on the plate because they are all edible. But we've already met them from the vase. So this is the blooming parsley, the green onion. This is a chicory leaf, quite bitter, but as we know, bitter is good. Sweet, bitter for the mouth and sweet for the stomach, right? Chives, a small wild sorrel. It almost looks like a clove,
Mhm.
but it's a small sorrel. You can worry about its oxalic acid content, but it's so tiny. Another chicory. Some are really bitter, some are not so bitter, but they survived much better than a fragile salad would survive in this weather. This is garden sorrel. This is Swiss chard, a small Swiss chard leaf. borage. Borage has a beautiful blue flower and a cucumber fragrance. So until our cucumber is not ready, I tend to put parts of the borage, mainly flowers, into the salad to create this cucumber taste. And there's another wild plant that has cucumber taste, very popular on the fine dining plates also. It's salad burnet. Not a garden plant, a wild plant. This is again a piece of borage, quite salty and a bit sour in itself. A mallow, but a small one. Remember it from my childhood. This is a cheese macrobiotics can eat also, because we would play with it. You can unpack this seed that is still soft, and it's like a whole cheese. We would play vegetable shop and have these cheeses on sale.
Mhm.
Parsley. Marika will be happy to see one of her favorites. It's an edible Chinese chrysanthemum. Also a little bit salty and crispy and very tasty. I almost said yummy, but I reserved the word yummy for this one, which is the fennel. Later, maybe I will run through some of my pictures and you will see the stories that I gave some seeds of fennel to friends' kids, and they put it in their garden and it came out, and the kids loved it so much they called it cham cham yum yum plant. And I heard back the story, so I decided to call my lunch that I gave on the occasion of the village festival cham cham yum yum. And the drawing shows the fragile little leaves of the fennel. So this is the cham cham yum yum plant. My basils are coming slowly. I was late to put the seedlings out, and now it's drought, so it's survival mode. But I realized that this is not basil, this is something else.
Do you give water to the garden?
You know, as a permaculturist, I thought what other things I give to the garden should be enough. But at some point I realized that I must water. I don't have a well, so I have to use tap water, and I put it out to warm it up and so on. I started watering. So this was basil. This is ground elder, nowadays considered a weed, but in the Middle Ages it used to be a cooking plant. They would make a stew or steam it or use it like that, but it grows very fast with its rhizomes, so it became unpopular. I saw it in Bob Carr's garden, and he happily uses it, and I use it. At least I use the very fresh leaves. Oregano, we saw. Classic thyme. Some plants are blooming right now, others have finished doing so. This is a late radish plant, still blooming. And it tastes like radish. It doesn't have the shape of radish. So this is the beautiful thing in this garden. You can taste and use all stages of a plant. The
Gabo,
mallow.
you have about 10 minutes.
Oh, really? So how are we going to see any of the pictures?
15.
Okay. This is also considered a weed, but it's oh, I didn't look this one up in English. Portulaca. Does it say anything to you? Portulaca. Clara is saying something.
Clara, you're muted.
Purslane. I love it.
Purslane.
I love
Purslane.
it. I
This
got
is
it growing
purslane.
abundantly. Yes.
Yeah, good. Then I should wrap up with my plate. And let's try to switch to a couple of pictures from the garden. And then let's say 5 minutes with pictures, or 7 minutes. And then I conclude. I'm opening my pictures and sharing the screen in a second. Yes. Yes. Is it shared now?
Yes.
Yes. All right. So living with plants means the joy of harvesting something perfect or nearly perfect and giving it as a present to your friends. Marika and Mike is two perfect pairs that they're happy to give us. This is an example of a weed which is treated in a different way in a different culture. This is the curly dock that is woven into braids in Armenia, and it's used for soup. I do it regularly because I have some Armenian ancestry, and when I found out that I have this so-called weed around me, and I learned that my ancestors used to have this practice with this plant, I prepare it every year. It's a joy to do it and to smell it. It has very special smell. But I don't need to use it because I'm surrounded with so many other plants. Probably this one has oxalic acid in it too. But they pour hot water on it before using it for food. It's a particularly nice autumn picture in the garden when everything is calming down, the heat is receding, everything has produced or other things are still producing. It's some kind of sense of contentness towards October, November. I often go out at night to look at the garden. It's more intimate. It shows another face. And I take pictures at night. Let me talk briefly about one of my drawings, which is about a practice I learned from people who are very much into orchardry and fruit trees. Next to the drawing, there are apple cores. I get my apples from my friend's garden. They have about 6 varieties that are heirloom varieties, and I consider the apple cores too precious to be put on the compost. So I put them aside. And what I learned from these orchardists is that it's a good idea to spread these seeds in the landscape. And a good way to do this is to throw these apple cores or other seeds that you want to spread into bushes, because bushes allow fruit trees to grow out through the bush, but it will protect it from some kind of animal that might come to graze it when it's young. It also protects it from the human animal that might come with a mower or something like that to cut the grass and cut everything else. And the drawing here is in 1st of January during COVID, when we weren't really visiting each other. So we are outside, there's a little fire burning, and I'm wearing all my clothes. It's really cold outside. And next to these little trees, I just planted my apple cores. And only after I quickly made this sketch, I realized that actually this looks not like 3 individual trees, but like one big tree with eyes, several eyes. And the way the person melts with the plant world appears in a mysterious way in this drawing for me. Kind of spinach that grows so huge that one cannot believe it. Of course, we are not living with plants only. We are living with all the other critters together. I'm very happy when the barn swallows arrive and they will leave their droppings. I also wanted to talk about the movement in the garden. When the garden is very dense in a permaculture garden, and particularly in a season when the garden closes itself, so to say, it overgrows, it's very interesting to move. It's almost like a dance. I discovered within a couple of years, my garden is small, so it is very dense. And I'm forced, I have some stepping pieces of wood, but otherwise I really need to watch my step where I step, because everything is everywhere, everything is something. So the movement in the garden becomes a dance, and my sense of balance has become extraordinary, I have to say, just because of the plants. How I use parts of the plants for weaving things. An example of a bolted kale plant, which is almost as big as a tree and is enjoyed by birds. It's gigantic. The winter beauty of the garden, when birds still come to the garden, but the ice turns the plants even more beautiful. And working and living with the plants starts early in February. I start the seedlings in February, March, and I still have some seedlings to plant. So it's a long nurturing story, but it's reciprocal. This is where I'm collecting the seeds of the nettle and the leaves. This is the borage plant that died out this year because I wasn't attentive enough. Collecting rose hip in autumn for vitamin C and for the good taste. Just picking a basket full of things from the garden, not things, plants. a newcomer in the garden, which inspired these drawings. It's called cut leaf teasel, Dipsacus laciniatus, and it's quite a character. It arrived here, I never saw it before, and it's like a miracle plant. One of my slogans about plants and food and eating is Van étel a bolton túl. There is food beyond the shop. And I always encourage people to look for that. This is my homage to brown rice and chewing. We have fantastic Hungarian organic brown rice, and I sprout it and I put it on trays and I'm drying it. And this drawing is about that with the chewing. I organize seed swaps, slow food gatherings. This is the cham cham nyam nyam. I think it's time for me to turn a little bit to my finishing thought, nettle, and a bunch of nettle branches, laciness everywhere, water in the garden through the roots of the plants, picking, what picking means in the garden. So I just wanted to share a few thoughts from a French philosopher. I'm really taking out parts of the text. The context is much richer. It doesn't only refer to eating, but what I took out from this at some point in my life is one must eat well. One must eat well doesn't mean, I'm talking about Jacques Derrida, and I'm reading his interview text. One must eat well doesn't mean above all taking in and grasping in itself, but learning and giving to eat, learning to give the other to eat. One never eats entirely on one's own. This constitutes the rule underlining the statement, one must eat well. It's a rule offering infinite hospitality. Eating well is at stake, today more than ever. What I wanted to, what I feel is important beyond what we and macrobiotics think about eating is this reciprocity that he mentions here. Later on, he talks also about the importance of respect for the other at the very moment when one starts to eat something. One has to have respect for what one eats. And one will begin to identify with what one eats. So my body is their body. This is the tea I'm drinking now. And thanking for your attention.
Bravo, bravo. Very nice.
Nagyon jól, nagyon.